Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United news and transfer news. Got some great insight into the Darwin Nunez story. We're also going to be talking about Eriksen being scouted tonight, an update on Kante, an update on a centre-back and a few other bits as well. I'm joined by Charlie. How you doing, Charlie?
Good, thank you, mate. How are you doing?
I'm good. Now, people might not know who Charlie is. We were just joking there. At his peak, he had 400,000 subscribers. Football content YouTuber, actually in relation to can play football and used to do like it was better than crossbar challenges, but that sort of videos. Played in the EE Cup, played for #United. I met Charlie last summer. Actually, I was commentating on the Clash Creators Cup, and Charlie plays up front, scored a couple of banging goals. So that's and a big Man United fan as well. So I was like, right, let's get him on the channel and have a chat with him when transfers are on, because I know he's knowledgeable on all that sort of stuff. So welcome to the show, Charlie. It's great to have you on.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. We're going to fly into Darwin Nunez. Now, we're going to try and make it a De Jong-free zone, which is a bit unfair on Charlie. Maybe we'll ask him about that towards the end of the show. But I, like many of the community, are fed up of the De Jong story. Until we get a bid, I'm fed up of the Spanish reports about pending negotiations. We need something firm on that. So we'll leave De Jong for that. But Darwin Nunez, I've been away for the weekend. Haven't really spoken to anybody. Spoke to somebody this afternoon about Darwin Nunez. What's going on? Desperately trying to find stories away from De Jong and Timber. I've always been I personally felt that Darwin Nunez was just agent talk and we were being used. I respect the fact that some other outlets have been saying, no, we're definitely in for Darwin Nunez. This is probably the first time where I'll acknowledge the fact that we're in for him. I'm not going to go 80% club or anything like that. I'm still 50-50. But talking to somebody this afternoon, they said to me, no, United are definitely advanced in relation to Darwin Nunez. They definitely want him. And beyond that, George Mendes is involved. He's not his agent. George Mendes is involved because he wants to come to the Premier League. But not only that, Darwin Nunez loves Cristiano Ronaldo and really would love to link up with him at Manchester United. So, that is quite positive. Whether I believe that story is up for grabs at the moment, but I certainly think it's a development on it. So Darwin Nunez, we need a forward. You play as a forward yourself, Charlie. What do you think about Darwin Nunez and his suitability for Manchester United, especially if we're going to be paying over 60 million quid for him?
I think, in all honesty, it's a tricky situation. Obviously, if he comes and he's happy with kind of, because he's not going to be a regular starter. So if he's happy to kind of come and almost get taken under Ronaldo's wing and play as that, I imagine if he was to come, he'd still get like a good 20 games. Obviously, it depended on minutes. I guess a lot of players will look at how many minutes they're playing over the games, because you could play like 30 odd games but get like 20 minutes each, and that's obviously not what they're after. But yeah, I think if he's willing to kind of learn under the first year from both obviously Ten Hag's system and obviously under Ronaldo, then I think it could be really good. Again, it depends on how much kind of Benfica are after. We were speaking kind of 5-10 minutes ago, Mark, about obviously the kind of transfer fee that he was going to cost. And obviously it's all up in the air, but it's looking anywhere from kind of like 60 plus really. And I mean, for someone, we've seen many a one season wonder type players, and hopefully he's not going to be one of those. But I mean, it is very difficult. There's a lot of factors that kind of come into it really. But I think he could be a success. But again, it does come down to kind of what he is willing to put up with in that sense as well.
Yeah, well, we were actually, make a good point. We were talking about this, and I don't know whether the community are aware of this, but I think he was bought. Charlie was saying for about 21 million, and I recalled it. I think it might be Almeria, but I did remember the 20% sell on. So if we pay 60 million for him, all right, you get 60 million Benfica, but you spent 20 on him, so it's 40 million profit. But then you've got to give him 20% as well, which is another 12. So they only actually make about 28 million on a 60 million deal. So you can see why they're trying to push it up. And there's two things for me, Charlie, I wanted to ask you actually. So first of all, should we, if we've got a budget where we want to buy a centre-back, a midfielder, a forward, and maybe 4 or 5 players, should we be spending 60, 70 million pounds on a forward who I like him as a player. I really like him as a player. 22, in 2 or 3 years, he could be one of the best strikers in Europe. He's fast. He's physical. I know people don't like his first touch, but you know, our whole team can't pass. So it's just adding one more player to teach how to pass for Ten Hag's not a problem. I suppose I like the player. I just don't know about weirdly, the deal worries me, that you spend that much money on a player that probably isn't going to start as a striker. I know he can play off the left, and the impact that has on the wider budget when we've got other things to solve.
Yeah, I think again, if you weirdly, I think the kind of attacking lineup, in my opinion, is probably the least of our worries. As much as we obviously our attacking output wasn't that good this year, I think the more important thing is we need to stop kind of leaking goals, and obviously the midfield is pivotal to that in the Ten Hag system. So I think there's just kind of more important issues elsewhere. Obviously the midfield and the defense, and I kind of just guess it would be a nice addition almost. Again, as you say, he's kind of played on the wing. I think he even played a few games as kind of like an attacking midfielder role as well, where he scored a few goals. Again, it's a difficult one. As I say, I think it's very much a nice addition. Maybe like we need to lock in like a defender and maybe 2 midfielders and then possibly go for him. But again, it's kind of how much budget we do have.
Yeah, ultimately it's what Ten Hag wants as well, isn't it? And I mean, it's a fan's job to be opinionated and cast an opinion and want to and look at budgets and things like that. And the only reason we're looking at budgets is because we think we've got about 120 million to spend, and spending half on it on a striker when you want a centre back and a centre midfielder makes it difficult. But look, apparently Man United have got a good chance of getting him. The Liverpool interest is true, by the way, but we'll just have to wait and see. But I like the look of him, and I think the fact that he apparently wants to play with Ronaldo. Ronaldo's probably got 1 year left in the Premier League. He really likes him. Let's see what happens with that one. I do want to ask you about the goalkeeper situation, but the next story I want to talk about, which is very topical, is Eriksen, Christian Eriksen, playing tonight for Denmark. Somebody tweeted out, I didn't even know this worked in football, but somebody tweeted out a picture of the scouts at the game, which is printed out. And I don't know whether you've heard of this, Charlie, or anybody at home, but apparently there is lists that clubs have of scouts at games. Have you ever heard of that before?
No, I didn't, to be fair. But I guess international games are quite a good way to scout players. It's a very different environment. Some people obviously feel a lot more comfortable around, obviously, people of their sort of origin and nationality. So, I didn't know that they did lists and that. That's interesting. Yeah,
well, apparently Tottenham is scouting him, and Manchester United. There's a host of other clubs, Borussia Dortmund. Of course, it won't just be for Eriksen. I don't even know if Eriksen's playing, actually. But ultimately, we are scouting. I'll put my hands up here. I don't even know if he plays for Denmark anymore, Eriksen. So, maybe someone in the chat. But we have got scouts at the Denmark game today, which prompted me to ask you this question. What would you think about Christian Eriksen as a Manchester United player, especially when we know he's a free agent this summer? Obviously, Brentford want to keep him. Mata's gone. Now, my stance on this is that I like Eriksen, but I do wonder how he fits into that team when you've got Bruno, Mabry, Donny's coming back. I mean, free agent or not, he is starting for Denmark tonight as well. Yeah. Well, we could be scouting him then. What's your thoughts on Eriksen then, Charlie?
I think it's interesting, actually. I can't remember whether it was earlier on or the other day where I saw you talking about it. And I agree with what you said, how he's almost like a Mata-esque type player, but probably more consistent and better, and would feature in more games. Again, I can't imagine him being a starting, player in sort of the big games, maybe a kind of, a cup sort of rotation Europa League type player. And I imagine he would do a better job than Mata. And I was a big advocate for Mata kind of when he first joined and during the Van Gaal days. But he needed to go. So that's obviously a good thing that he's obviously he's obviously left. But again, it's just, are these players kind of, although it is a free transfer and it almost comes across, oh, it should be kind of simple, like, why wouldn't we just go and get him? But we need to convince these players to come to our club. And if, Brentford are going to want him to stay, he single-handedly pretty much kept them up. So he'll start every game for Brentford and be a pivotal member of their squad, or come to Man United, hopefully fighting for Champions League spots next year, and be a bit part player, really. But again, I'm all for him coming. It's just very much like, if he's kind of willing to accept that he will be that kind of 15 to 20 games a season player.
I think when you're constructing your dream transfer window, and we've been doing it for a few weeks on this channel, you've got 175 million to spend and you need to get 5 players. It's really easy to chuck Eriksen in because he's free and he's class. He's a class player. I like Eriksen, and I agree with you. I think Brentford were going down, and the reason they didn't go down and revitalised was because of Eriksen. But I think you hit the nail on the head, and I've heard a few people saying this in the chat as well. I don't disagree with people in the chat saying that Eriksen should play over Bruno. I think Bruno's performances last year would warrant that conversation. Eriksen was very good in the Premier League and Bruno wasn't. But ultimately, we've just given Bruno a big contract on big money, probably 200 grand a week. I don't see how you play Bruno and Eriksen in the same team. And therefore, what you're saying to Eriksen, well, yeah, you might play in the Europa League. Whereas at Brentford, he'll play every game. And if Spurs want him, he probably, would he start for Spurs? I don't know. Maybe he would, because he might play him in the behind the three of Son, Kane and Kulusevski, I suppose. So I think that's the issue. I don't think we'll get Eriksen. That's my opinion. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's only recently come out kind of that we were interested. I personally, I don't see it happening. And I guess it's not that big of an issue if we don't. Again, he wouldn't be a kind of starting player, so there's much bigger issues to kind of worry about, I'd say.
Just reading someone in the chat saying he did not single-handedly keep Brentford off. Well, that's an opinion, mate. I beg to differ. I think as somebody who had a £500 bet on that Brentford would go down, I cast a very detailed eye on Brentford and felt that around January they were going to go down, and then Eriksen came in, and then suddenly they just seemed to find results again. So I think he was a catalyst at the very least as to them acquiring the points they needed to stay up. I don't know who Denmark are playing. A lot of people are saying Lema. Maybe Denmark are playing Austria. I suppose that may well be. Give us a thumbs up in the chat if that's the case. Matty says, I read an article that we may be linked with Brian Broby. Any news your end? He was on loan to Ajax from Leipzig. Thank you. I thought he moved to Leipzig from Ajax last summer because we were linked to him then. But it's the, I suppose it's, that brings me on to another player, because I heard Fabrizio Romano out on about him. He's with the Dutch squad at the moment, Steven Bergwijn. Obviously not having a great time at Spurs, but gets in the Dutch squad, which is a bit of a contradiction to Donny not getting in the Dutch squad, because Van Gaal says he doesn't play enough. But Bergwijn doesn't play for Spurs. He's in the squad, available for about £25 million. Ajax, Eriksen did train there. Do you think that some of these players are really just being linked to us because anybody who's had a touch point with Ten Hag that might be available is a player to bring in? Or do you actually think that there might be something in a Bergwijn who's available for 25 million and solves an attacking issue?
It does almost seem that anyone kind of Dutch is just linked, obviously due to the Ten Hag link. Anyone, just all these players are just kind of coming out the woodwork that could possibly be linked with us. But I don't think personally. I don't think there's going to be much in it. He did actually say, I can't remember, I think it was earlier or yesterday, there was a quote that came out saying he kind of had some words about Tottenham where he said, oh, I play well for the national team, blah, 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 but I can't get a game at Spurs. And I think he was keen to leave in the summer as well, wasn't he? In January. But
he always plays well against United. I remember him just running straight at Maguire and Lindelof a couple of years ago, which actually, you'd probably do that, Charlie. You're a good striker. You'd probably fancy a chance to get them too. But yeah, I don't know whether he's United. I don't know. I always worry about players that are yesterday's news. It's like we've done that a few times. Alexis Sanchez, and I'm not saying he's anywhere near the level of Alexis Sanchez, but we seem to pick up. I don't like it when we pick up players, and people are going to infiltrate the chat now with examples of where it has worked. But I do worry about managers and players that have almost failed in the Premier League, and then we go, let's give them a chance. It's a bit like Mourinho as a manager, and as I said, Alexis Sanchez. There's been a few, and that's what worries me about Bergwijn. But then again, we don't know about Ten Hag. We know he's an obsessive tactician, and maybe if we had a coach that can polish a diamond, maybe someone like Bergwijn might be worth it. He's still young.
Yeah, it's again, as you say, we get linked with this player, we let them go somewhere else for a couple of years, and then we'll kind of then approach them again and sign them. And it's kind of obviously a little bit strange in that way. And I guess we'd kind of never know. You know, some players are unreal under different managers, and you know, you can see their career obviously go from kind of, you know, a bit average and stale to kind of exceeding under the right manager and stuff. And it happens at all levels of football. You know, various managers, even in like non-league and stuff, will move to another club and take, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 players with them who they can trust and know that, you know, they're good enough. So maybe that's why we are linked with so many players who, you know, who's been and played under Ten Hag. You never really know until it kind of happens, and we then see them play for United under Ten Hag.
We've got a couple of topical stories to talk about, but as a guest on the show, it'd be wrong of me not to ask what's your feeling as a United fan at the moment around United and the problems that we've had. Was Ten Hag your choice? Obviously, a lot of people are very happy with that. Even the ones that aren't happy with it tend to be excited about it. But there was a good proportion of fans that wanted Pochettino. And why do you think United have ended up in this position?
So Ten Hag was the one who I preferred out of himself and Poch. I don't think I would have minded if we did approach Poch, but I think it would have been almost. I think it would have been the wrong choice out of the two. So I'm glad that we did go with Ten Hag. And I think a couple of weeks ago, when I think it was Fabrizio came out and said that, you know, Man United are going to sign 4, 5, 6 players. Obviously, you naturally get excited because every single transfer window, Man United are linked with the biggest and best players, kind of no matter what situation we're in. Obviously, that's just down to the nature and how big the club is. But as it kind of, you know, the tour and that is kind of getting closer and closer, and not much is happening in terms of deal done, deal agreed and stuff like that. Obviously, you do start to get a bit tentative and worry, because we obviously have, bring his name up, De Jong, Timber, but then if we don't get these players, who are the kind of next best option? And it obviously kind of gets a bit worse from there. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of very wary. Obviously, we go from finishing second to finishing in a Europa League place, and it's pretty bad. I mean, I was really looking forward to that season, and it was a shambles the whole year long.
Why do you think what when you look back on that season, because we've all got our own individualistic reasons for it, but why do you think it went wrong this season? You know, you've played football more recently than I have. You've been in dressing rooms. You've been in teams that have performed well, and probably been in teams that haven't performed well. Why do you think it went wrong from your point of view? What's been your sort of frustration to provide some sort of reasons for United going from second to, you know, scamming almost the Europa League position? I mean, if we weren't for Brighton, we wouldn't even be in the Europa League.
Yeah, true. I mean, look, I think I've been quite lucky during the kind of adult football life of that. I've not been in a kind of toxic change room, but I imagine that would be a very, very big factor into kind of other things. And I know Manchester United are very heavy on, you know, making everyone look really happy at training on Instagram and stuff. And, you know, I mean, we can go and get battered 5-6-0 by a team, and it looks like we've just battered them 5-0 the next day on Instagram when we're playing head tennis or something. But Yeah, I mean, again, as I said, I was very optimistic when kind of the first ball was kicked, and then it kind of just went from bad to worse. But went from bad to worse, and it was just, I think Rashford was obviously out for the first part of the season. It was like, oh, when he comes back, we we might have another option. Then he came back, and it just never got better. But yeah, as I say, the toxic change room wouldn't do anyone any favors. It will leak kind of everywhere onto playing and everything, everyone's attitude, and I imagine that the change room would have been the biggest thing. Oh, I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I'm muted. I was muted.
Oh,
I was muted. It was my end.
There we go.
So nobody could hear me there.
Panic over.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you in a little bit about what players you'd move on, whether it's short term or long term. I think there are players in that team that some people know won't be sold this summer, but maybe they're not part of the future. And also maybe the players that you think you've got to build that team around. But before we get to that, one of the big issues is the goal. Well, I don't think it's an issue, but it keeps popping up. And you mentioned it, so I thought I'd ask it because we've got something topical about Dean Henderson to bring into the show. And you mentioned about under Ten Hag and new system and playing in a different way. So Dean Henderson was apparently going to Newcastle. The Telegraph have come out tonight. Now, this is going to be very interesting how it develops, because Fabrizio and a couple of other journalists were saying that this deal is advanced with Newcastle. Well, the Telegraph Northern reporter has come out and said this is not the case and it's not going to happen. There's now talk of maybe Bournemouth and a loan deal for Dean Henderson, but it's definitely one in our fan base where some people just do not value David De Gea at all as a goalkeeper. They don't think he's the right sort of goalkeeper to have. And whether it's using Dean Henderson, some people don't think he's good enough and they just want a new goalkeeper. Some people, they think it's him. But where do you sit on the goalkeeping situation and the importance of it, and whether David De Gea ultimately is somebody to I mean, I think we all agree he'll be the goalkeeper next year, but long term, do you think it's more important to go and get a goalkeeper that's more modern, I suppose is the word?
Personally, I love De Gea. I think obviously what he's been our player of the year, like 4 of the last 5 or 6 seasons. Like he's been ridiculous, and we would concede 20, 30 more goals if it wasn't for him. I think the kind of modern day keeper is almost not necessarily overrated, but is talked about a lot more than it kind of should be. A keeper's first job is obviously to stop the ball going in the back of the net, and if you're in a tight situation, you've got to lump it, just kick it out. Like it's not that big of a deal. I think De Gea's stuck by us when he probably didn't need to a couple of years ago. Obviously there was the Madrid links, and he could have left when we've been in obviously sticky situations over the past couple of years, and he could have gone. So I'm happy with obviously De Gea for the foreseeable if he keeps his performances up. I mean, again, it's almost you need to. It might become very clear and obvious that in Ten Hag's system, if he wants a goalkeeper who can play with his feet, he'll get found out very quickly because it will be very obvious. And then, people might open their eyes and go, this, he's obviously not the right keeper. But in terms of shot stopping and everything like that, I think he's more than good enough. Who knows? Maybe he might turn into a wizard with his feet. He is Spanish. So, he might be more than good enough.
I think that's a great point, because I've got a video. I think it's going to go out at 7 a.m. tomorrow. So whenever you wake up, everybody, check it out. It's only one of the short videos, and basically, it's looking at the De Gea issue from the side which I don't agree with, and really doing what the critics don't do, which instead of just saying De Gea's rubbish, I've looked at the last 5 years, and some of the results, some of the stats are shocking. So check that in the morning. But I like what Charlie said there, is that in a very short assessment, one thing I never really hear about when criticizing any of our goalkeepers is the fact that Liverpool and Man City play high line football, high possession football, and therefore their goalkeeper has to come out the box because it's a high line and teams hit long balls. We don't play like that. For the last 6 years, we've basically parked the bus and hit teams on the break. How's your goalkeeper going to be a modern goalkeeper? He's going to be running past Lindelof and Maguire holding hands on the edge of his box to come and take their ball. De Gea has got his limitations as a modern goalkeeper, but I also think there's huge improvement there just in the way that we play. You're not going to exceed as a modern goalkeeper in a team that's got a back four stood on the edge of the box. You're not going to come out your box. You're not going to get to pass very often. So, but this is the same as Ronaldo up front. Ronaldo's had games where he may as well have been doing his Tesco shop. Like, he's had nothing, and that's because we're not a possession-based team that spends a lot of time trying to force a team into their own half. And ultimately, we will need a goalkeeper that can come out of his box next season. And Ronaldo will get a lot more of the ball in a possession-based team. So I think it's going to be very interesting. And I agree with Charlie. I think the time to, instead of speculating about whether De Gea is a modern goalkeeper or not, let's put him in a team that plays a modern way, and then there'll be nowhere to hide. And that's basically, I think, where I'm at with that. But just on Dean Henderson, though, so this story, Charlie, about him not going to Newcastle, I felt that was a really good move for him. There's been rumours about him being unhappy and maybe being a leak from the dressing room. Trust me, there's more than one leak, so it's not really fair to pin it all on him. He's certainly a good goalkeeper. Newcastle's a great club to go for. I mean, they may have more chance of winning the league before us, considering how much money they've got. They're a club on the up. He wants his England spot. He'd be number one. I'd be all over that move if I was Dean Henderson, who apparently wants to move. But if that's not happening and there's talk of Bournemouth, I mean, can we afford to loan a player again when we're desperate to bring money in? And then the problem's not... this is what Solskjaer did. He loaned him to Sheffield United, then he brought him back, and then he didn't know what he was doing for 2 years, and then he's back in this boat again. We need money. How would you solve that situation?
Yeah, I think I can't see the point in almost Henderson moving out on loan again. I remember there was a clip years ago when he was at Sheffield United, and he was saying how, one day he was going to be England and Man United's number one. And at this current stage, he's probably good enough to be like a mid to low Premier League goalkeeper, number one. He could go in a good 60% teams and be their keeper. It's just he can't. He obviously isn't happy, sitting on the bench. I can't even. He didn't even play more than 5 games last season. That's got to be.
I don't think he started a Premier League game.
Yeah, it's got to be demoralising almost. And I know, again, you obviously De Gea's kind of had an outstanding season, and you don't just swap him out for no reason. But obviously, especially in a team that's doing really, really sort of bad for their standards as well, it's got to be demoralising. And I'm not surprised that there isn't almost more clubs kind of sniffing around him. And I'm with you. I thought that the Newcastle thing would have been a really good move for him. Obviously, get quite a long-term deal on half decent wage, and be their number one moving forward. Where obviously they're only going to go up in the league and Europa, Champions League, winning leagues within the next 5 to 10 years. So, and he's only young, so he could do really well there. So yeah, I find it weird that we'd almost, or he'd want to go out on loan, unless he's just really that determined on being Man United's number one within the next 2 or 3 years.
I prefer De Gea over Dean Henderson every day of the week, and I'm not bothered about people saying anything about that, because that's my opinion, and that's just the way it's going to be. But I do think Henderson's a good goalkeeper, and I do feel sorry for him that he's basically wasted 2 years of his career, because he came back from Sheffield United 2 years ago with a very good reputation, and last season he had a bit of a chance, but this season he's not had a look in, like you say, and you don't have a long career as a footballer. And I know goalkeepers have longer careers, but as you say, if he goes to Newcastle, he's got to grab that opportunity if he can. I'd be on to my agent, because there's not many clubs in the Premier League where you can walk in and be their number one. I mean, Brighton have got a fantastic goalkeeper. Villa have got a fantastic goalkeeper. So there's not many clubs you can go to and be their number one. And a club like Newcastle that is going places as well, you'd imagine that England number one spot's up for grabs. If he's at Newcastle and Newcastle are doing well, then it's there to be grabbed. The United position, look, maybe Ten Hag might just go, look, I want that type of keeper, but I think the scrutiny at United, there's a lot of fans that wouldn't like that. So I just think you've got to look at your own career. We'll have to wait and see. One final topical story I wanted to bring in, and again, I think it was coming in from, I can't remember the outlet, but they were talking about Kante again, and Tuchel's concerns about Kante's injury record and potentially looking to cash in with 1 year left on his contract. Again, this is a divisive one. We were speaking about it a couple of weeks ago. Would you take Kante at United for, say, 20 million at 31 and into that midfield? Would you take him at United?
It's a tricky one. I found it so interesting when this came up a week or two ago that we were almost linked with him. I was gobsmacked. It was really strange. But again, if you asked me this question 3 years ago, obviously he would have been worth flipping 5 times more than obviously what we'd get him for. But he's again struggled a little bit this season. But again, there's probably not necessarily better players, because there's not going to be many more kind of his type of defensive midfielders out there, but they're obviously going to be a lot younger, like Lema, obviously have a lot longer career ahead of them, and hopefully not as bad of an injury record. So, I mean, it's interesting. Probably I would take him, but maybe as not necessarily a last resort, but he wouldn't probably be my first choice, just because he struggled a bit this season, and obviously age and everything that comes into it. It's like when we signed Matic. Again, if we signed him 2 or 3 years earlier, when he was obviously at his peak, we probably would have gone and won the league. Like, he was that good. But yeah, obviously it's hard to be in the engine room, as they say, at the latter stages of your career. I suppose the interesting thing
about Matic is that even I agree, we bought him too late, and even well into his 30s, he's still the best CDM we've got. I suppose I phrase it a different way though, because you mentioned Lema, and Kante will go down as one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. I hope that time is kind to him, because I think he has to go down as one of the best Premier League midfielders. And one of the things I like about Yaya Toure is that at the time I knew he was, and we're coming for 10 years later from his sort of prime in the Premier League, and he still gets mentioned as that. And I think Kante will be. But if I said, right, 25 million, you can have Kante or Lema, which way would you go and why?
25 million either way, Lema or Kante.
Yeah, whatever price you get, one or the other, and I will buy you.
No, I think I'd take Lema. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like, I obviously know more about Kante in the sense of would have seen him play a lot more, just because he's in the Premier League and obviously Leicester, Chelsea. But just I imagine you'll get a lot more out of Lema over the years than you would Kante. What he's going to sign a 2 or 3 year deal when we're probably not going to be challenging for the league for certainly not next season. So then obviously you're going into the 2nd and 3rd years. Kante going to be around for that? Hopefully you can obviously build Lema into that kind of, player that is part of your spine of your team. So yeah, I think that's probably the reason. And I imagine a lot of people would playing FIFA, Kante's the go-to sort of defensive midfielder, and will be like, I want Kante. But yeah, it's just kind of how it is. You got to kind of put your thinking cap on and think long term, and a lot more sensible rather than like, dream team sometimes.
Well, I think it's the dynamic of Manchester United. It's the Poch or the Ten Hag. It's the Kante or the Lema. I think that the Lema sign, and I don't think we'll get Lema. I think he'll go to Bayern Munich. But I think with Ten Hag, United fans, in their majority wanted Ten Hag, and that was an encouraging sign because that shows a desire to reset and take the time to try and rebuild. Even if it doesn't work, it's the right path to go because that's what we need to do. And I think Lema probably represents that more. What I would say about Kante is if he said to me, I will not be injured next season at all, and I'm going to play well, I'd be like, well, yeah, I'll take that for a year because we'll be back in the Champions League. And I think what you make from the Champions League, it'd make more than worthwhile getting him in. But that the problem would be that it would be short-termism, but it would also be a concern about his injuries because we've seen it with Cavani. There's no doubt that Cavani's a fantastic player, but he's just not been there. And if you're not, we've seen that with Cavani. If a player's not fit, they may as well not be there. So we'll see what happens with that. I doubt it'll happen. I don't think United can go and buy a player that Tuchel's looking to move on because of injuries and then bring him to Manchester United. We've got to be boxing clever. And as with anything, Charlie, there'll always be a next Kante. And I think you mentioned that before. This is something that United need to be better at, even if it takes a little bit of time for them to settle. We're in the Europa League next year. We're not expected to win the league next year. If there's ever a time to United to bring players in who need a little bit of coaching and development, because let's face it, our whole squad would be, I think the fans are hungry for that sort of signing as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's kind of countless players out there. Obviously, hindsight's a wonderful thing. You look back and you can think, oh, imagine if we sign this player. But again, even if you do, you never know quite how it's going to work out. But yeah, there's countless players out there that we need to be better at scouting and looking at, because these players that go to, you look at, I think, what did Leicester sign Kante for? Was it like 800,000? Like it was nothing. And Mahrez as well. Like it's silly. Yeah, it's silly to think about. Like, but again, as I say, hindsight's a wonderful thing. But yeah, we definitely need to improve in terms of the recruitment. I mean, we can't even be that club to go out and just buy the best player anymore with the amount of money, because we need to persuade these players to come to our club. Which obviously makes it a lot more difficult. But yeah, obviously buying them at a younger age for less money to then obviously nurture and kind of perfect that way is obviously a lot smarter, but is the long-term play rather than going out and buying the best players for 50+ million. But yeah.
Well, I think the club would deny this anyway, like they deny a lot of things, but they can almost sleep safely because ultimately there is no doubt that the club is trying to change. We're working on more than one deal at a time at the moment, which is what we never used to do. We've had a change of CEO. They're trying to separate the business with the football and have football people running the club. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist for what I'm about to say. But I've spoken to people close to the club over the years and asked them these questions to why we can't. Leicester won a league title more recently than we did. You can't just go, oh, well, it's Leicester. That's why they went and bought Kante for so little, because they can take a risk. Brighton, I think, are a better footballing side than us, and they beat by people like Cucurella, who's been a revelation, and Basuma. That's nothing to do with the size of the club. That's to do with the mentality of the club. We should be buying players like that because if you're good enough, you're good enough. And it's about scouting and it's about decision makers. And I've been told numerous times, and I'm sure many other people have, from people close to that club, the reason United don't buy these players is because they're not going to sell a shirt. They're not that they want the shirt sellers. They almost adopted the failed Real Madrid tactic of the early noughties when they bought R9 and Figo and Beckham and Roberto Carlos and Ramos, and they brought all these players in, and but it didn't work. They didn't win a Champions League. I think they won a La Liga. And yeah, United have just been obsessed with shirt sellers, to be honest. And that hopefully is going to change. And I think Ten Hag, in my opinion, Charlie, will be quite against that because it's not what he's about.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. In the past, like 4 or 5 years, we have been, looking for the signing that's going to sell the most shirts rather than obviously the maybe lesser known player that obviously can produce week in, week out rather than like one in every 3 games, which is obviously not what we want. And then you look at obviously Brighton, as you say, signing Cucurella, and now City want him for like 45 million or something. So it's again, even if and Man United again shouldn't kind of, I guess, look at doing this. But even if you were to sign these lesser known players to then play for 2-3 years to then sell on for 30-40 million, but I guess we'd much rather make that money just selling shirts. But yeah, it's a difficult one.
I was going to ask you this, and I'm sure people will be interested in the chat. We've got Charlie Morley on as a guest today. We were talking about this before. I don't know how many people will know him because he's been a bit inactive on his YouTube channel, but football lifestyle was what you did. Good footballer, very good footballer, big Man United fan. And I did want to ask you about if you, because every fan's got their own ideas about who should go. I mean, if I said to you who should go from Manchester United, I'm sure you'd come out with the Wan-Bissakas and the Martials and the people like that. But where do you sit on, if I said to you, well, I'll name some names. Where do you sit on these? Do you think they are going to turn it around and be good enough? What's your opinion on, say, Bruno Fernandes?
It is Bruno. Like I really like Bruno. Obviously, the January that he came in, he was obviously pivotal and kind of an incredible half of the season. I think the way that he comes across on the pitch obviously isn't great in terms of the kind of whinging, and cameras are always going to be on him because they know that when he someone doesn't pass to him, or he messes up for the 5th time or whatever and he throws his arms in the air, it's obviously a talking point. I think it's almost at that stage now for Bruno's Man United career where he just needs to kind of knuckle down and fully just work on like how he plays. And there's one thing that he does that I notice all the time, where he'll come in to receive the ball from a throw-in, not look and just boot the ball across the pitch, thinking that he can just do this big switch, and it might come off like 1 in every 5 goes. But I think, was it Zaha who scored from him trying to do that in the last game of the season?
It happens quite a lot.
Yeah, and it's just it baffles me. It's like like you don't have to. It obviously looks great, and don't get me wrong, when it comes off, it's the part of your highlight reel at the end of the season. But all you need to do is just simplify it and just ball retention and look. Some games he's absolutely unplayable. Same with Pogba when he played, but it's kind of it gets to that stage where it's like, at what point do you almost go, with Donny coming back, at what point do you go, well, yeah, we're gonna give this guy a chance who we think might work better in the Ten Hag system? But yeah, I mean, I don't think, and I'm not sure you're saying this, but I don't think that we should obviously look at selling him. We've just given him a big contract upgrade, as you say. But yeah, I think he just needs to kind of work on his almost attitude and not necessarily his mentality, because he does work hard. It's just little things like when he tries to boot the ball like 60 yards across the pitch, it's rather, instead of like, oh, that's the only pass on, it's like, oh, if I make this pass, I'm going to look really good. So he's almost comes across a little bit selfish to me in that way. But I think again, he could be pivotal in hopefully next year's success in some way, whatever you kind of interpret success at.
Yeah, he's almost become the master of the unsuccessful no look pass, hasn't he? Because I know exactly what you mean. He receives the ball and sort of hits it on the turn, and yeah, I think one of the things you said there sort of resonated with me was that when Donny first came to the club, I wanted Donny to get game time like a lot of people, and Bruno was actually playing quite well then, and a lot of people almost were like, well, Donny keeps the game too simple, whereas Bruno makes things happen. And I think it's funny how football can change, because people almost think if you have an opinion 18 months ago, you can't have a different one now. There's no doubt to me that Bruno was a revelation when we bought him. He was a success. He hit the ground running and he was brilliant for a year. But for the last year, it's not been as good. And I think Bruno's in danger of the thing that he was praised for when we got him, that ability to produce something out of nothing, that wonderful pass, that wonderful shot. Whereas in a possession-based team, a number 10 who simplifies things suddenly becomes really important. And I think this is Donny's threat to Bruno is not his ability to score from outside the box or play a stunning pass. It's his ability to pass and move intelligently, which you'd think maybe will favour Ten Hag. The chat are getting involved, Charlie. Harry Maguire, where do you sit on him? The master of the high line and speed. not, I don't think, but we spent a lot of money on him. He's 29, 80 million pounds. He's the current captain of the club. He's definitely not going anywhere this summer, but it's a hard one because I think the chat will be going, sell him. But it is a hard one because I don't know what the solution is there, but it's very difficult to bench a player of that value because you're going to make him no value at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was looking through some old tweets yesterday, I think it was, and I think I tweeted like 2 years ago about something about Maguire, obviously not being very good. And I retweeted.
You're ahead of the game. You need to retweet that then. So we.
I did.
You retweet that tonight. Give us your Twitter at the end and retweet it. It will bang.
Yeah, no, I did. I said that. I can't remember exactly, but it was something about him not being very good anyway. But yeah, I think there's almost the hope. Like there is a player in there. It's just it was everything last season that went wrong. Almost seemed to have him involved. It might have stemmed from someone else, but it always had him in it.
It was like the no-look tackle, wasn't it?
Yeah, someone else could have like mucked up or whatever, but he could have just done that. I don't know off the top of my head, but he could have just like, the ball's gone for his legs countless amounts of times, or even just like things that he can't even help, but it goes in off of his shin or something, and it's just like the typical, it's him again, like Harry Maguire again. And it's just he was just that player that always was talked about for the bad reason. And again, I don't think, and it was weird when he came out during the end of the season saying, "Oh, I can't be playing that bad because otherwise I'd be, there's two managers that keep on starting me, Solskjaer and Rangnick, so I can't be playing that bad." And it was like, well, you are, mate. Like, you're pretty crap, to be fair. So yeah, as you say, it's a difficult one. I think it's almost like clean slate start of the season, and he almost decides his own kind of fate and destiny after like 10 or so games. We could win the first 10 games, and he can obviously be vital to keeping clean sheets and stuff. But yeah, it's one for almost like when we're a third of the way into the season and you almost kind of figure out like, look, this guy isn't kind of good enough to be starting, let alone, club captain.
What worries me about Maguire, just to add a little bit, is that I believe he can play better than this season because it's hard not to. And I think you make a great point about every mistake seemed to have him involved. The João Felix goal in Madrid, that's a cross into the box. All right, he might not be quick, he might not be agile, but we spent £80 million on somebody who I expect to be good in the air, and he allows João Felix to score a header. It's just not good enough. But what worries me about him is, even if he plays well, he's in a foot race against Erling Haaland next season at the Etihad, and
don't even talk about that. Oh,
but God. We want to play a high line, and if it is, even if it's Tuanzebe who is not going to play, at least Tuanzebe's going to go with him for pace. Like, it's the problem for Maguire for me is I know he can play a lot better, but he ain't never going to be quick enough if he gets caught in a one-on-one against the quick striker, which ultimately probably will happen when you're playing in Ten Hag. I mean, you'd fancy your chances in a foot race against Maguire, wouldn't you?
Yeah, to be fair, I would, and that's the thing is, I can't imagine that Ten Hag's almost going to sacrifice the way he plays to like compensate for Maguire being slow as well. Like, I can't imagine him being like, "Oh, well, we've got a slow centre back, so we can't play how we want to because we don't want to get kind of turned around." And the worst thing is to obviously get that ball in behind, the diagonal ball in behind, and have the defenders, having to turn around and have a striker up behind you. So, and yeah, that's obviously not what he's very good at. Yeah, I mean, if he played for us how he played for England in the obviously World Cup and Euro games, then he'd be like one of the best players at the club. But it just nothing seemed to go right for him last season, and obviously I hope it obviously changes. But I guess it's just kind of up to him.
Yeah, definitely. The one I wanted to ask you about, because as a forward yourself, I suppose the most important one to get your opinion on, Marcus Rashford. Obviously, he's another player that's not going to get sold this summer, but we're talking about new manager, future. He's 25 this year. He's not had a good couple of years. All right, injury last year, but he has, I mean, since Christmas, definitely been injury-free. People say about Rashford, on his day, but on his day, he still closed his eyes for crosses. He still really wasn't that creative, possession, build-up play. There's no doubt at his best, he can score a goal and he can skip past the player. Where do you see Rashford at Manchester United over the next couple of years?
Yeah, good question. I think I was lucky enough to go and watch when we played Atalanta in the Champions League, and Rashford in the first half, he was, well, during the whole game pretty much that he was playing, he was so good. And I think it maybe was like his third or fourth game back from injury. Obviously, he came back and scored a few goals, and he scored in that game as well.
He came on against Leicester, didn't he, and scored a good goal, even though we got battered. Yeah, I remember that goal.
Yeah. He probably could have had 2 or 3 against Atalanta, actually. And I thought, like, wow, like this kid's going to be instrumental to kind of, bringing us up the league table. And it's a real shame to see, actually, that obviously he's not performed, anywhere near kind of what we've seen and expected from, this, like, when did we first see him? Like 18-year-old kid. Like,
yeah,
he was
Van Hal era now. It's
I
been
mean,
on for 7 years, isn't it?
He you look back and you think, obviously, when you're that young, you've almost got nothing to lose. You've been given your first start, and it's like you're so raw, and he's almost become very predictable, I guess, in what kind of his movements were, and he quickly got found out that if he got played on the right, he obviously couldn't cut inside because he didn't trust his left foot. So obviously he went on the outside, but then his deliveries weren't good enough. But then when he played on the left, it was very obvious that he wanted to cut inside. So the defender just had to show him down the line. And yeah, I mean, again, I think there's definitely a player in there.
See, I agree with you. I agree with what you've hinted at there. I've said this a few times. I think with Rashford, he's either going to become really good again or he's been figured out, because players can get figured out. And some people just think, oh, he's going to come good because he was good. I've seen it over the years. Some players get figured out, and it might be I'd have to really watch it next season, but it might be the case that teams have just figured out how to deal with Rashford. He's always going to get his head down and either get a shot off or run at you. And if you know someone's going to do that, you double up on them. Like you say, you show them inside. And if they haven't got a pass in them, or they're not intelligent enough to just slow it down and keep possession and work for a better... I mean, I kept saying about Rashford, just simplify your game. Instead of getting your head down and trying to skip past 3 or 4 players, play a pass to Bruno and make a run, because he'll probably dink you in behind. Just simplify your game. And that's what I think he's got to do, Charlie. But I don't know whether he's got that in him. He's got to mix it up.
Yeah, I think as well, there's obviously been, and it's not just kind of once or twice, there's been a fair few times where he's not obviously thrown as big of a strop as Bruno, but at least Bruno will run back to try and get the ball, and Rashford hasn't done that. You can almost turn a blind eye to a bad performance if that person, when they lose that ball, they don't have to win it back, but they make that effort to run back and, work for the team. And he kind of hasn't done that. There could be a handful of reasons as to why, but you can only kind of hope that he obviously goes away and because he's not obviously with the England side, you just need to hope that he goes away, has kind of, you know, fully resets and gets his head clear and comes back and hopefully hits the ground running. And yeah, we get kind of the old Rashford back, because I do think when we first obviously got Sancho, it was Sancho on one wing, Rashford on the other, and it obviously it sounds so good, but yeah, it turned out it just obviously wasn't working. Yeah, I think and I really hope that he comes good next season. Again, it's another player who is kind of, and it seems like we've got a lot of them, and I keep repeating myself, but that they will decide what happens by their performances next season.
He'll definitely be given an opportunity. I was just looking there. Denmark are playing Austria. Apparently, it's going to kick off at 9:15. Yeah, he will definitely be given an opportunity. Oh, Sean, don't be starting with this. I forgot about this. 9 o'clock, Charlie. The views start to go at this time of year, and they expose themselves as Love Island watchers. Every summer.
Yeah, that started today. Yeah, I completely forgot.
At 9 o'clock, we lose 1,000 viewers normally because it's Love Island. You're exposing yourself, people. You really are, which is what that show's all about as well. So there you go. But no, I think with Rashford, he's a player that will be given an opportunity. The thing I look forward to the most is that there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that McTominay, Maguire, Shaw, Rashford, Bruno have to look at themselves in the mirror. They've dropped off this season, but also in relation to De Gea as well, and Ronaldo in the quiet games, they're all a victim of a lack of development. And Solskjaer and his coaches were just not good enough. We've now got a coach who can coach, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of these players just completely change, not overnight, but gradually change, because they're going to get coached, and you need to have that at the highest level. No, them Man City players can't play that brand of football without Pep, or Liverpool can't play that without Klopp. So you put Solskjaer in charge of City, and they'd be the same old crap that we were. So that's what I'm looking forward to the most.
I think the players have got to want to learn as well. That, like, if they're not willing to obviously listen and learn to kind of what he's, you know, giving them, then they're doomed. And Solskjaer and that kind of team obviously worked off of kind of just keeping everyone happy, and as long as everyone was happy, everyone seemed to be playing well. And it very much wasn't the sessions. They you know what, they probably just did like what you did when you're like 11 in training, do a quick like little like few running drills to keep everyone's fitness up, and then played a big 11-a-side game at the end where everyone has loads of fun. But yeah, they need to be willing to learn, which will obviously be kind of pivotal in their own success. Otherwise, they're just going to obviously kind of decline and go downhill.
I've got to be honest, I've seen videos of City training and little bits of Liverpool every now and again. I've seen loads of United training. I've never seen a United training drill where I've gone, oh, that's innovative. It's always the sort of stuff that you know, like you say, that you see on a Sunday morning pub football or something like that. But I mean, ultimately, it's got to get better. It's flown by, Charlie. Great debut on the channel. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, been great.
Good stuff. Charlie Morley on the show, United fan. Where can people find you, Charlie?
Twitter and Instagram. I can't even think about my handles. What are they, like? Charlie Morley _ and Charlie Morley, I think, on Instagram. Yeah, that's kind of my main social media now.
Cool. Well, it's been great to have you on the show. Hopefully we'll do it again. Thanks everyone who's watching. Love Island, here we go. If you are one of those lot, I suppose. But we will be back. I've got a cracking video going up tomorrow morning, like De Gea with a twist, because I'm actually coming from it the angle I don't agree with. I'm coming at it from the angle of why he's so bad at distribution and everything. And I think there's a really key ingredient to that. So that'll be out at 7 a.m. in the morning. I'm back live at 10 o'clock with the morning news show, which hopefully will remain a De Jong free show. I don't want to talk about De Jong unless we get something really big updated as well. But thanks for coming on, Charlie.
No problem. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
And thanks to everybody else for watching as well. And I'm not off to watch Love Island. I'm going to watch the rest of Stranger Things. So thank you for watching, everyone.